How to deal with passive-aggressive people at work. That's the question we're pondering today on the Art of Lifing at Work with Keka. Have you ever had to deal with somebody at work that really was passive-aggressive, so nice but then not so nice, their behavior changes from time to time? If you have a colleague or a coworker, sometimes even a manager who's passive-aggressive, it can be hard to kind of work around them, especially if your goal at work is to have fun, do things intentionally. When you're when you're serving in a position where you're doing things on purpose, you really want to make sure that you're harmonized with your team. So over the course of my career, I've had those experiences where I've worked with different people that have had different levels of passive aggression. But there's a few lessons that I learned along the way that I was hoping to share with you. So number one, I really do think that when you find somebody who's passive aggressive, who's kind of saying something but not saying something, it is so important to put that out in the open and just call a spade, but to do so in a nice and a gentle manner. And I think that's the key thing, because so often we react with emotions, and if somebody says something, we immediately get defensive. Well, how dare they? Or then we want to actually do a tit for tat sort of move and then be passive aggressive back to them. But those sort of circumstances never create clear communications. So my rule of thumb, if somebody is saying something to me and I feel like they might not be very genuine, they might be saying something in a way where they're trying to tell me something but they're not saying it openly, I'll usually put a response together where I call it like it is and say, am I understanding clearly that this is what you are asking me, or this is what you are asserting or implying? But I tend to get, I live in my emotions and I feel it, and I'm sure a lot of people do too. So what I tend to do is I leave that email. I never send something right away. I wait. Sometimes I'll wait an hour or 2 hours, or sometimes I'll even wait overnight. And then I come back and I revisit the email and I will say, what I'm putting in the email, is it really necessary? I edit it down to the most concise part of the communications that I want to share. And quite often in that process, when I revisit the email, I will reduce the tone. I will turn things and make them more accurate. If I might say, well, I'm glad you told me this, that might be something that comes across as sarcastic. I might say, I appreciate you telling me this because it makes our communications more clear, or I would appreciate something. So I just look for different words in that second edit. So one of the rules I would suggest that I follow all the time is that always make sure that you make the point clear. If there's something that's being intended or implied, just put it out there and say, am I understanding you correctly? Because sometimes that's not what they mean. But we clarify it that way. And then I would say, before you send that email out, always just wait and let your emotions come down so that you can edit your work. Lesson number 2, when it comes to working with passive-aggressive people, I do think that sometimes it is important for us to restrain the emotions we have. And it's so easy to, in the moment, say, I want to talk to you right now, let's clarify this. And sometimes when emotions get high, conversations derail. And one of the rules of thumb that I always look at, whether I'm saying something or I'm writing something to somebody, is that would I feel comfortable sharing this communication with a future potential employer? Or if you're an entrepreneur, a future client that's just getting a chance to know who you are and what you do. That filter can really change what you say and what you communicate, because it's all about, at the end of the day, how are you coming across to a third party in this circumstance? And that helps me keep my parameters in terms of what I would do or what I would say. But in that process, what happens is I'm actually not escalating conversations with the person I might be having some difficulty with. I'm bringing the conversation and communications down to a factual level and really talking things through so that I can feel proud of how I might come across in the future. And lesson number 3, direct communication. So often we are emailing people who might be just across the hall from us, for example. What I try to do is I wait a little bit till I'm a little bit more calm and I've had a chance to look at things, and I'll go through this exercise to say, if I was in this person's shoes, how might I be feeling about what's happening here? So sometimes what that means is opening up our perspectives. So their response might not be valid from the perspective that I have in the moment, but if I think about what they might be going through and what's important to them, and I put myself in their shoes, I look at things a little bit more, like I widen the horizon and say, is this person generally like this? If they're not, I can have a better understanding, and then I talk to them in person. Because when you come back with a perspective, when you're looking at both sides of the story, as best best you can, because we're all subjective, but we can reduce the subjectivity when we think about it from both sides. And when you come and speak to somebody face to face, that's when you see their intonations, you see their facial expressions, you might even get much more context than you otherwise would have had, and it makes a big difference at the end of the day in the reactions you get. And one final thought I'll leave you with is that I think it's so important that we respect our personal boundaries at work and at home. I once had a manager that in the moment had gotten very upset and really started to yell at me. And I took a step back and I said, I'm not spoken to like this at home, and I don't want to be spoken to like this here at work. Let's take just a 10-minute break and then come back and talk about this, because things had gotten so escalated. And when we did that and we came back together, we had a much better conversation. So can we avoid passive aggression and passive aggressiveness at work? No, probably not. We'll come across it from time to time. But if we take these types of lessons and insights and apply them into our workforce every day, I'm pretty sure I can promise you that you're going to have a smoother time and hopefully create better relationships at work. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, then please like it and share it with anybody that you think might be interested in this content as well. I would also love it if you could subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos every Tuesday. And last but not least, if you have any comments, I would love to have a conversation with you. Let's do this journey together. Let's master the art of lifing and really do life on purpose.